Our next Faculty Hall of Fame inductee and final 2017 Alumni Award honoree is Howard Young. Howard Young spent much of his Minnetonka high school career teaching social studies and world history. When the multicultural studies program was developed, Mr. Young received the Fulbright grants to prepare and then taught electives on China and India. During the time when we offered an experimental school within a school program, Mr. Young helped chaperone a motorhome excursion to the Grand Canyon, where they walked to the bottom and camped for several days. Wow. He also coached the ski team for a brief period and chaperoned many ski trips. Whatever his role or subject area, Mr. Young it was always the students who made it very special. Introducing Mr. Young is his friend and former colleague, Dave Ringstead.
Good morning. I'm Dave Ringstead, and I'm sorry that I can't be with you this morning, but I'm glad for a video that allows me to talk about Howard Young. I first came to Minnetonka in August of 1965 for a workshop, and I was introduced to the staff by Nick Duff. And when I was introduced to Howard Young, the one thing I could determine right away in first impression was that I was dealing and teaching with a gentleman, and also a gentleman with a sense of humor. And at the first department meeting an hour later, Howard would express his views, but many times he included a bit of humor with his views, and sometimes that humor was self-deprecating. And that paved the way for acceptance, because you can't get mad at a guy that makes himself the fall guy, and made the views of his more acceptable also. One day, shortly after I came, Howard and I walked out of the social studies office and into a lot of kids moving in the hallway, and one of them bumped into Howard. And Howard looked at him, and he cheerfully said, "Oh, Mr. Prosser." And then we split. But I thought about it at that time. What a nice way to deal with a situation that could have been ugly. Howard knew the first name and the last name, and he dealt with it as I then in the future dealt with it, thinking, use a student's name when you see them in the hallway. One day we were told that we needed a new teacher because one of them had resigned. And the central office then advertised for our position. And one day the central office said, "We have 150 applications. How would you like to deal with it?" Well, we took those 150 applications and 4 teachers, and we met at my house, and we started going through them and filtering them down into 2 or 3 that we could then share and come up with the best. And at some point, Howard began dropping a folder, and later dropping another folder. And I said to him, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Well, the applicant has made a spelling error." And he said, "I think when we have 150 applications, we're going to be able to find a very good teacher who also can spell." And we did. And her name was Kelly Bunty. And she's the only person I've ever known that went to Wyoming and climbed the vertical Devil's Tower from bottom to top. One time he told me where he had assigned a research paper to a student, and the student was not happy with the grade. And the student wanted to know why, and Howard said, "You didn't, in your conclusion, come up with what the facts were." And she said, "Well, my conclusion had to do with the way I felt." And he said, "You don't develop the way you felt until you first have the facts to base how you feel." And as a result, I thought, Howard, you did the right thing. Bud Leak would say to something like that the student experienced negative learning, and Howard fulfilled that very, very well. And so over the years, Howard taught many students, well over maybe 2,000, 3,000. But he also taught me, and he also taught other staff members. And so I say to you today, Howard, thanks for being Howard.
I was going to keep my remarks very brief, and I will. I just can't remember where I planned on on starting. As I sat here listening to the award presentations, I am overwhelmed with honor to have been included in a year with such distinguished people receiving awards. I'd like to thank the Alumni Association for sponsoring this project and the many other efforts that they spend on the fine arts awards and projects in the district. Minnetonka was a fantastic place to spend my teaching career. And I am particularly grateful for the multitude of students who have left me with such a warehouse of fantastic memories. Thank you very much.